First of all, I want to let my group know that I really appreciate the discussion that we had. It was so nice to put the names with the faces. I think we have a great group. We openly shared our thoughts and ideas, and it made a difference to see others' points of view. Our group discussed the physical barriers which are addressed in the ADA, as well as the issues related to eliminating those barriers. We were all able to understand the barriers and see how they impact those with physical and sensory disabilities. However, the more difficult aspect of this assignment was to determine how to enforce ADA and to understand the ongoing issues related to the eradication of these barriers. Crystal said that architectural barriers are described as any limitation in the design of the facilities that restricts their access and use by persons with disabilities. Paul mentioned that a public school in Texas is finally having to make the school accessible for wheelchairs. He also mentioned the VA hospital where he works is not accessible for individuals with vision or hearing impairments. As the majority of people with vision loss are not Braille readers, it's helpful to have Braille as well as audible signals on elevators that announce each floor. Miguel mentioned a wedding where a 10-year-old girl who uses a wheelchair had to be carried into the establishment. He said in his recent post that several months later, nothing has changed in terms of the wheelchair access, thus the building is still not compliant. Instead of the individual bringing the barrier issues to light, each establishment should be made to comply with the law, and the loopholes need to be closed, as Judith expressed in her post. I mentioned in our meeting that I addressed a noncompliance issue. My friend of more than 30 years is my son's audiologist, and she shares a building with the builder's owner, who is an accountant. The owner of the building removed the Braille signs from the restrooms, so the UPS and other delivery people wouldn't use the restrooms. So I approached my friend, who did not stand up for me or my son, who is blind. She was not going to make waves or address it with the owner. So I did. This event changed my friendship with my longtime friend. The owner of the building said I threatened her. I told her that I was not threatening her. However, I expected that she would put the Braille signs back on the doors and that I would be back to check. This really made her angry. I also told her I would report her noncompliance. On my follow-up visit, the signs were up, but they were on the inside of the doors. Now, that's a big help to blind people, I believe. It's amazing the point that establishment owners will go to not to be compliant. I believe the situation should have been handled by my friend on her own. Even if the accountant wasn't aware of the law, my friend is familiar with the law. She was afraid the accountant would not renew her lease, or she would suffer other repercussions. I think similar situations occur when the owner of businesses may not wish to address these issues with the landlord, or maybe they did without success. In the current system, the burden is on the person with the disability to file a complaint with the Department of Justice. If the individual does not get resolution by speaking directly to the owner of the establishment. For people with disabilities, they have such a burden in society, from securing workplace and school accommodations to filing complaints about physical barriers, to transportation issues, and so on. And in my opinion, it's an unjust system of burden for the person with a disability. The Department of Justice is the government agency that enforces Title III of ADA. Unfortunately, the enforcement is only done when the complaint reaches their department. A complaint may be filed with the Department of Justice either online, by fax, or phone. And if the individual with the disability cannot file a complaint using any of these methods, someone from DOJ can assist them using other means, for example, using a video phone. Crystal also said that changes to the current ADA enforcement process can be implemented by stricter penalties, fines, and possibly community service assignments from the disabled communities. She is of the opinion that if the amount of fines could be raised after multiple noncompliance warnings or tickets, then the number of violators would decrease. I suggested that it's stuck. That the money from the fines go into the coffers to increase solvency of Social Security. At this point, often resolution involves court costs and taxpayer dollars. Our group agreed that the enforcement is the most difficult aspect of eradicating the issue of physical barriers. I think we need to have a Ralph Nader of ADA. We need ADA police. I also think that engineering schools need to focus on universal design and barrier-free design for students studying to be architects, engineers, and industrial designers. It is often more difficult and more costly to retrofit buildings already built than to have all new construction accessible from the start. Unfortunately, even with the ADA, this is not always the case, even with new construction. We had a $22 million expansion of the physical rehabilitation hospital where I worked in the mid-90s that ended up without wheelchair accessible bathrooms. So many examples exist like this one. I do believe that the loopholes can be closed. However, the DOJ website says because of the numbers of complaints, it takes 3 months to even get an initial response. And unfortunately, 26 years later, a better system is not in place, and the onus continues to be on the individual with a disability. Thank you.